because I don't know how that's going to blow back on me dealing with my own
Yeah.
charges of bigotry.
Yeah. If I can say so, I mean, you have, as it were, a bigger problem than I have on that because you, I think, self-identify as a liberal, I suppose, as a left winger, don't you?
You
And
know, we should get into that because at this point I'm not even sure what that means.
no,
We should
I'm
go
not
through the
sure what it
checklist.
means either. I'm not sure what it means either anymore. And, and so on. But I've never particularly cared for that. I, in all sorts of ways, regard myself as a liberal. In all sorts of ways, are regarded by some people as being left wing. But I don't particularly care about it, and I think I'm more identified as being a right winger or a small c conservative, and so on. And I sort of don't mind about the labels anymore. And to tell the truth, I know it might be different in America,
Mm.
but in Europe and in Britain these days, I think that these things are mattering less and less, and we're losing patience with this game. Because you see, if the whole game is played on the left's terms, as it were, then first of all we'll lose because there is no possibility of confronting very large societal issues only with one fragment of the political spectrum. And it's also very clear, I would say, by now that and I mean, look, I've got, I say some of my best friends on the left, but it is very clear to some of us that the left has been the problem on dealing with these issues. It is the left that has been throwing around willful and I think deliberately, knowing that they're not true, allegations against people.
Mm.
You know, I've often said that with the modern left, since certainly the end of the Cold War, they've basically had a supply and demand problem. They want racists, they want Nazis, they want bigots, and actually, thank goodness, certainly in my society, I think in yours, they're in pretty short supply. And so these people have to find them. They want a supply of bigots and racists and fascists, and actually the supply is extremely small, and the people that they demand are too small in number to really give them enough of a political identity. So they stretch it out. They've deliberately used as offensive terms as they could, and used them of people that they must know do not fit that
Mm.
label. And I think the result is, by the way, among other things, that they have denuded certain terms of any meaning, and that this is going to come back and bite the left in a big way. And I can see this happening in Europe all the time at the moment. You know, the accusation of racism, for instance, I don't think it's going to wash for very much longer. I
Mm.
just don't.
Mm.
Nobody cares as much as they used to about that because they have seen the left use it on everyone. I've seen it for years. I've seen my black friends called racists.
Right.
I've seen my black friends called sellouts and coconuts and all sorts of things. I've seen the most vile racial abuse of racial minorities by the left. And I don't care about this anymore. It's too late to be willing to be blackmailed by people who are fundamentally insincere in their insults.
It's like they've sold their souls to the devil and they got stupid in return. I mean, so
Yeah.
I mean, just before the atrocities in Paris, the previous news story was the students at Yale, where we just saw these students, you know,
Mm,
and they're shrieking narcissism. I mean, these
mm,
are among the most privileged kids in human history, and they
yeah.
became moral and psychological invalids in response to a polite email about Halloween costumes.
Yeah.
So something is
Well,
very strange on the left right now.
well,
What the hell is going
could
on?
I give one explanation of what it is? Another another conservative who I'm sure would make you tingle with slight fear, as
Hmm.
it were, if I mentioned his name. But an American conservative who used to be on the left and moved very much to the right, David Horowitz.
Mm.
Um, he said some years ago something very interesting about 1968. Now, I mean, we know we might have all sorts of issues about this, but he said something to me I think is far more true today, which is that the surprising thing is not that young people would rebel. Young people always rebel. This is something that young people do. The surprising thing is, why did the adults give in? Now, I think this is far more relevant to today rather than 1968. The amazing question which hovers over Yale University is Why do the adults sit and take it and the kids can run rampage? Why? What's happened to? And this is the really large problem, which Islamists and other terrible people are simply taking advantage of. Somebody needs to say to the shrieking girl who's effing and blinding at her professor, you know what? You're not at a home. This is not a home for you. It's a university. It's a very different thing. And what's more, if you cannot cope with Halloween costumes, then you've got no place at a university, because you're going to have no chance of dealing with quantum physics or Shakespeare or Heidegger if Halloween spooks you out this much. You're a useless person, and you're going to go into a useless career, because if you're a lawyer and you have gone to Yale, but you're too sensitive to hear about rape cases, you're not going to be able to represent anyone in a court of law. So you're no use for the law. You're no use for literature, because you might read a novel which will trigger you. You're no use for the sciences. You're no use for anything. And that's what the adults should be saying. They should be telling the kids to grow up. And the adults have lost their confidence, and that is the most striking thing to me. And let me just say one other thing about this. This whole thing of the weirdo sexual obsession, transgender, trans polygender, identify cis. I've got a penis, but I can still win Glamour Woman of the Year award. And who are you? If not only do you have to respect me as a woman, if you say I'm not an entire woman, despite the fact I've got a penis, still you're a bigot. And then you got to find Caitlyn Jenner attractive. If you don't find her attractive, you don't want to sleep with Caitlyn Jenner. You're an even bigger bigot. This is what, and actually to cite the other person you just said that would trigger you, Sam Harris, Mark Stein said this the other day. This is the conversation we're having when the mullahs will nuke us. Everyone will be discussing whether somebody is transgender despite the fact they've not had any operation. There's a woman in Britain called Jack Monroe, a fatuous far left-wing so-called anti-poverty campaigner, totally talentless individual. This blogger has recently come out as transgender. She says, by the way, she's not going to do anything about it. We just have to call her transgender and regard her as transgender, but she's not going to get a penis put on her, and she's not going to have her breasts reduced or taken off or anything, and she's not going to... We've just got to start calling her a non-sexual pronoun. Now it's theirs for Jack Monroe. The Pink newspaper, I'm gay, I read some of this crap. The Pink newspaper ran a story about Jack Monroe becoming transgender because she says she is. I think she just wants a bit of publicity. They run a piece about her, and they've got to say there. Jack Monroe wrote a piece on their blog saying that when they was younger, I mean, it's an assault on the language apart from anything else. Anyone who cares about our delicate and beautiful language should turn away now. But we'll all be discussing whether somebody who hasn't got a penis can be a man, and whether somebody who has got a penis can be Glamour Woman of the Year when the Islamists come in with Kalashnikovs. It's pathetic. It's a breakdown in our society, and you have to rectify it. As an example, let me give you a quick example. The day after the massacre in Paris on Friday at the Bataclan Theatre, outside the theatre, where almost 100 people were gunned down at a concert, where the jihadists, the Islamists, lined up disabled people in their wheelchairs and shot them one by one, shot people in their teens, shot people who were grandparents, shot people in the back and in the head. The most grotesque massacre in modern times in Europe. The next day, this man turned up, who always turns up after terrorist incidents, and he brings a keyboard and he plays John Lennon's Imagine. And all of these broadcasters and newspapers and things were quite taken by this again. People said how moving it was. And I think, screw that. This is no time to turn up with your ruddy keyboard and sing John Lennon. Imagine there's no countries. Yeah, okay, you don't need to imagine. They've been trying it on the continent. The Schengen Agreement erodes borders. John Lennon would have loved it. Well, so do the jihadists. Guess what? Free movement of people, free movement into the continent, free movement from North Africa and the Middle East into Europe, and then once you're in Europe, free movement wherever you like. They love that. We don't need this ruddy utopian Leninism. any more than we needed any other stupid ideology. But this weak, pitiful, let's change our hashtag, let's do a hashtag, let's turn our Facebook profile to the tricolor.